Welcome to Parc Ferm, the Canadian Formula One podcast.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Parc Ferm, Canadian Formula One podcast. I'm back with the boys. I got Thomas, Drew. My name is Walker, and we are in a bye week, so we have no race to recap, but lots to talk about, lots going on. We'll talk a little bit about Suzuka, which is coming up very, very soon in a few days. But I thought maybe we would start this episode by reviewing some of the talk in the paddock. I mean, we've talked a lot about what's happening with Ferrari and Mercedes and Sainz. But when we look at that drama and those pieces that need to move around, you know, it's going to affect a lot of the grid in a lot of other ways, right? And one of those teams that it's potentially going to affect is Aston Martin. Fernando Alonso has been rumored to be on the short list for a Mercedes seat or maybe even a Red Bull seat, one of the open seats. But that really leaves Aston Martin with a little bit of searching to do for themselves. So I just want to kind of talk about that a little bit. Let's start there. It's been reported that obviously they want to make Fernando's decision to leave as difficult as possible. What do you think they have to do to make that happen, Drew?
Yeah, I think that there's a big hill they need to climb in order to get Fernando Alonso to stay for next year. Like I just think that, you know, the way Aston Martin's been moving the last half of last year and into this year is just not the direction, right? Like the beginning of the 2023 season, like Aston Martin was, you know, fighting for second place very regularly, and Fernando was on the podium a lot. And I think that gave him a lot of confidence in the team. But, you know, I think with the way things that have kind of been unfolding, at least at the beginning of this year, Aston Martin is not looking like one of those teams that, you know, that Fernando is going to be able to do any damage with. And, you know, because he's at the end of his career, his second career with Formula One, I just don't think that, you know, I don't think there's enough time for him to want to stay in an Aston Martin seat. And, you know, with the shaky driver market that's going to be happening at the end of this year, I just think that there's a lot of change that's going to need to happen. And, you know, I'll give it up to him, but Lance Stroll's been doing fantastic this year. Well, not fantastic, but he's been doing much better than he has historically.
Relatively fantastic.
Relatively. Yeah, exactly. Relatively. But I think that there's, you know, that needs to be considered. Obviously, Papa Stroll's got all the money, and so he's the one who's making a lot of the decisions. But I think Mike Crack's got, you know, a big task on his hand in order to have Fernando stick around with that team a little bit longer. And, you know, let's play it out. You know, let's say Fernando Alonso doesn't stick around. Who's Aston Martin going to go after? Like, what is that driver lineup going to look like? You know, is maybe Lance Stroll somebody that they look to have to replace, right? And maybe, you know, Fernando sticks around and Lance is somebody that they have to worry about. Who knows? Like, I don't foresee that being the first set of options that are happening. But, you know, what do you got on this one, Thomas?
It's interesting. I think, you know, someone in Discord or YouTube, or I saw somewhere, basically Aston Martin or Fernando Alonso said he's going to wait till Aston Martin essentially brings the upgrades, I think, so he gets to experience the car, and Aston Martin wants to make it a very, very hard decision for him to basically to make him think hard about his choices. So I think in order for Alonso to stay, I think Aston Martin needs to bring out something out of the box, completely amazing, that will compete with Mercedes and Ferrari and McLaren. Do I see that happening? Probably not. You know, who knows? Maybe they're going to pull a white rabbit out of their ass, but I don't think it's going to happen. Where do I see Alonso going? Do I see Alonso going to Merc or Red Bull? I wouldn't care where he goes at that point. I think both of those teams would be amazing. It would be amazing to see him in a Merc or a Red Bull. It would be something definitely different. It'd be a very nice switch. Do I see him, though, leaving Aston Martin? As of this second, as of all the info that we have right now, no. I think he's going to stay. He's going to give it 2, 3, maybe 4 more races before he makes that decision, if he gets an offer. I don't think he's going to jump on the first offer he gets. And plus, who knows? Maybe, as you said it, Drew, maybe Papa Stroll is going to throw him some big bucks and going to make him stay with the team just for that. But then again, maybe he wants a world championship title, so he might end up jumping ship anyway. It's too early to tell. It's definitely going to be interesting to see where this leads.
So I framed the question as, what do they have to do to keep Fernando? The other way to look at it is, what does Fernando have to do to keep that seat? You know, we have Sainz coming up, doesn't have a contract. Perez doesn't have a contract, which, you know, as much shit as we give Perez, you know, he's had a good start to the season. I'd say he's done pretty well. Is it about Aston Martin really courting Fernando Alonso? Or is it about them just trying to like give themselves the best position possible to attract the best talent? In this case, it might be Sainz. Additional addendum to that question is, do we see a world where if Aston Martin has the opportunity to sign Alonso and Sainz, that Stroll is out of a ride?
I don't think so.
Two-part.
I don't think
Yeah.
so. I think, okay, do I think Aston Martin is courting Fernando Alonso, or is Fernando Alonso trying to keep that seat because there's other options? I don't think somebody like Checo is going to be comfortable in an Aston Martin seat, because I have to think about it like, if Checo or Carlos Sainz got into that Aston Martin as is right now, do I think they could do the same job or better than Fernando Alonso? Quick answer is no. I think Fernando is getting everything out of that car every single race, and I think his experience has allowed them to even float where they are. And I think if you put another driver in Fernando's seat, that Aston Martin would be doing much more poorly. And I think that you know, they are trying to keep Fernando Alonso happy at this point, and I think they need him in order to keep that team even in the points on a regular basis.
I agree with that. I think Fernando doesn't have to worry about his seat. It's what Aston Martin needs him more than he needs them. Simple put like that. He doesn't have to worry about it. He's going to be there if someone throws a better option, you know, whether that's more money or more competitive car, he's going to weigh his options. But yeah, I think he's safe with Aston Martin. And to Drew's point, I really don't think anyone else, maybe besides Max or Lewis, might be able to do better than Aston. But, you know, those drivers are probably not going to jump to that team.
Well, let's move on to Ferrari. We've touched on Sainz, but I want to talk about the team. Obviously, last race in Australia, they had the big 1-2 finish, maybe primarily as a result of you had Verstappen going out, you had a couple of Mercs out, right? So the field was thinned a little bit. Is this a sign of things to come, or was it a one-off fluke? Does Red Bull have any mechanical issues to worry about?
The mechanical issues throughout the entire grid has been few and far between in the last few years. Like, I think the reliability of these cars has definitely, even since I started watching in like 2016, has gotten so much better. You know what I mean? Like, you know, I've seen some of these archive races on F1 TV. Yeah, that's a sponsorship shout out right there. Let's get some money in, boys. I think that, you know, a lot of old races and a lot of championships historically have been decided through DNFs and like cars, you know what I mean? Like crapping out halfway through a race. And we just don't have that as frequently. And so when things like this happen, it's like, oh my God, look what happened here. Or, you know, besides someone putting in a wall, like just an actual mechanical failure is just so few and far between. I can't imagine Red Bull, you know, repeating this scenario over and over throughout the year. I think that whatever happened, you know, and Max's little freak out there saying everything was dumb and what a stupid mistake or whatever that brake issue was, I can't imagine that happening again. Can I say that, like, you know, there won't be some reliability issues? I just don't think that they're going to make a habit of this in any way. And like you mentioned, Walker, I think that was a great point that, you know, the herd was very much thinned. And the fact that it was a 1-2 finish from Ferrari and McLaren, you know, finishing rounding out that podium, I really think that, you know, that just kind of shows where that second, third, and fourth team are. And like, you know, Mercedes just is nowhere up there because George was fighting for 6th or 7th place with Fernando when that crash happened. and Lewis was already gone by that point, right? So yeah,
So
I just can't imagine, Ferrari banking on this. And I know Freddie Vasseur had kind of said, this is what Red Bull looks like when you force them into some errors. I just don't think that I don't think that that's something that you can bank on race in and race out. You're not that good, Fred. Chill out.
I wish I could say this is a thing of things to come. I wish they're gonna have more problems, more DNFs, but reality is they're not. It's a one-off fluke. The one-offs are gonna happen. Max is gonna continue to dominate, most likely for the next 99% of the races left. Yeah, it was a one-off fluke, and it's gonna happen. But there's still a strong team as long as Max is there. They're most likely gonna dominate.
What was it? Which car had the issue as a result of the visor tearaway? It got stuck in the cooling vent. Do you guys remember last
Which car
race?
was that? That was
a
Alpine.
car. It was Alpine, right? Someone
Yeah, it
ripped
was
off the
Alpine. Yeah,
visor,
yeah,
threw it in.
yeah.
Maybe what we do, maybe we commission Logan Sargent to just drive really slowly, and every time he's lapped by Max, every time he sees him coming, he's just fucking ripping those things off right
Flinging
in
them.
front of him,
Yeah.
flinging them. They'll be like those little banana peels in like Mario Kart, and Max is
Mario
gonna have
Kart.
to just avoid them. Brake duct, engine cooling, so many options. But maybe that's the option, and Logan he sacrifices himself. Speaking of dominant, Max, more chatter around Mercedes, Toto, and Max. Some more videos again, all friendly, shaking hands, chatting. Is this just Toto trying to stir the pot and pull a Christian Horner, or is there any legitimacy to these rumors and these interactions that we're seeing?
I think Toto's still cheesed with the fact that he missed out on that. Like, I know Toto had a lot to do with the grooming and the ability to bring Max through the lower ranks. And I know he had a lot to do with a lot of the sponsorship and stuff. And Horner kind of scooped in at the last minute and picked up Max and gave him an offer he couldn't refuse. And I think Toto's still been asked about that for the last few years. And I think that Toto would do anything in his power to kind of get Max if he could. But I don't think that that's going to happen. I don't think, Max would jump ship at this point in time with a car that's underperforming in every way. And I just think that there's too little time before the reg changes in 2026 for Max to do that. I think if 2026 comes and Mercedes has a couple drivers on a more short-term contract, and they have a much more competitive car going into the new regs, I think that would Max change? I think so. I think he might say enough's enough if Red Bull can't pull their socks up in time for those regulations. So do I think it'll never happen? I honestly thought that Lewis was going to retire at Mercedes too. So never say never. You know what I mean? So that's very much a truth. But I do think Toto's kind of stirring the pot right now. I really don't think that that Max is going to be jumping ship at this point, especially when he has the most dominant car in arguably Formula One's history.
Beautifully said. In Drive to Survive, Lewis touched up a little bit on loyalty. He said, I'm going to stick with Mercedes and blah, blah, blah. Max touched up the same thing on Red Bull. As long as Helmut Marko's there, I'm going to be with Red Bull. Do I see Max jumping to Mercedes? No, I really don't. Besides Drew's point, I think loyalty's there. He's loyal to Red Bull, to Christian Horner, maybe not so much, but to Helmut Marko. He's going to stick there. He's going to stick it to the end. Even if Toto Wolff comes up to Max with essentially, fuck you money, I still don't see Max going to Mercedes for the time being, for the next couple of years, for sure. I think he's going to stick it out with Red Bull as long as Helmut Marko's there, and he's going to stay there. If Helmut goes, then maybe Max is going to start exploring his options.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think money is at all a motivating factor for Max. I think he's as pure as a competitor as I think you almost can be. And I think, money is going to follow him wherever he goes because of his talent. But I think in no way does it ever become like a motivating factor for him. which I think is evident by the fact that he's like, he might just like quit Formula One and try like rally racing or whatever, or go like some endurance racing, right? You think he's just always looking for a challenge above anything else. So we do have Suzuka coming up in a few days. One of my personal favorite tracks out there. Always a fun race to watch. Lots of different dynamics on that track. Home race for little Yuki, who has been racing his little heart out this season. Just fucking crushing teammates for like 2 years now. Absolutely no mercy. Last year, I think we looked this up. He was just outside of the points last year in Japan. Didn't have a great race. Do we think he's going to continue his dominance over Danny Rick this weekend?
100%. I don't know how many times Yuki needs to prove that he is, out driving his co-stars for, like, how much more does he need to prove to anyone in order to validate himself in the Formula One world? I think he's one of the most underrated drivers on the grid, and I would love to, just for like shits and giggles, just love to see him in a really competitive car. I'd love to see what that kid could do, because I really like him. His personality is hilarious, and I think he's a lot of fun on the grid. I really hope that he shows up in Suzuka for his home fans, because that's always a good vibe. But as far as out qualifying Danny Rick, yeah, is he going to do better in the race? 100%, 100%.
I mean, I hope you don't eat your words on this one, Drew. But I think I agree with you. I think Yuki's gonna perform. He's gonna out qualify Danny Rick. I actually wanted to touch up on this as well. It would be so nice to see him get a seat, or at least a chance at another team, so he can really show us what he's capable of, because I think he's close to pushing the car to the limit, if not at the limit. He is a talented driver. I don't per se like him, but I don't dislike him. I think he's a good add-on to the track, and his personality is it's been fun to watch, that's for sure. Yeah, I think he's definitely gonna outpace Danny Rick, and hopefully be in the points this weekend.
So I think, there's, at what point is Yuki okay, let me ask you this. Let me rephrase it. Do you think Yuki Tsunoda is ever going to have a shot at that second Red Bull seat? Like, ultimately,
No.
this is what the RB team is all about, right? The whole point of the RB team is to like groom guys in order to get them to a place where they're in their front running team at Red Bull. And I just like, they keep putting guys beside Yuki, and Yuki keeps outdriving all of them. And like, is he just waiting for Checo to leave so that he gets a shot at that? Like, I don't know. I would love to see him in a seat if Checo's gone.
I was thinking about that as we were talking about him, and just thinking about the dynamics between him and Max in the same car on the same team, because I feel like they are both. We talk about Max being like a massive competitor and just like ruthless, and I feel like Yuki has that in him as well. As we saw, a couple of races ago with Danny Rick, when he dive bombed him on like the cooling lap, right? He's just got like this fire inside him, and I think it'd be a lot of fun to see them race together on the same team with, somewhat competitive machinery. That said, I think, if he continues to really drive the wheels off that car, and I think he will continue to dominate Danny, I think they should give him a look. He deserves a look. If nothing else, maybe there's some testing he can do. I'm not really sure, but I think, to your point, like,
Lawson,
Ricardo, Lawson, was a good test, but that was short-lived as well, right? So we don't know the longevity of like Lawson's competitiveness, but I think given what he's done so far, I think he deserves a look, and if he doesn't get one, I would not blame him to look somewhere else.
That was what my follow-up question was going to be. I would love to see Yuki and Carlos Sainz at like a kick Sauber when they turn into Audi. Like, what a fun little matchup that would be.
That would be a lot of fun. Although, just this is a complete like side note. Did any of you see the little promo piece that Bottas did with Kick Sauber on social, like the video game, like the intro?
No.
No? Oh, you have to see this. You know how like when you're like choosing this would be bad for a podcast.
Oh
You're choosing like
yes,
you're
yes,
choosing your
yes.
like your character in like Mortal Kombat or whatever, and they're just like rocking back and forth like the same movements. Anyways, we should link this in the show notes, put it on the Discord, because Botas did this little thing where he was like a video game player and he was just doing
Choose your
like these little
character
motions.
essentially.
Choose your character essentially. Anyways, what the point I'm trying to get across is that there is not a better fit for Kick than Botas at this very moment, given like his personality and the caricature that he is, and that promo piece. I thought that was like absolutely genius. That said, a couple of years down the road, Audi, button down, German, no fun. I think Yuki and Science could be a great fit together.
That was my next question. I was gonna say that, like, when it's Kick Sauber, that's all fun and games. But like when Audi comes into play, like, do you think they're gonna be that fun-loving team that Alfa Romeo was, that the Kick Sauber team is? Because like we saw the transformation as soon as Bottas left the militant kind of Mercedes Benz, he grew a mullet and a mustache like overnight. He couldn't wait.
Yeah, I think it's very much Mercedes model. You
I think so
can't take
too.
the German out of Audi. Like it's just like it's built in. Like that's just how they are. It's how they're going to
Just like
operate, right?
Mercedes business, no casual Fridays per se, all business. I could see Audi following the same suit, professionalism, no fun things per se.
As someone who used to work for Mercedes selling cars years ago, I remember they used to have like a super strict dress code. So it was like suit, like full on suit, tie, the whole 9 yards. And then
As
they
someone who
introduced
worked for Audi, I agree.
and then they introduced like their casual attire because they thought the buyers were becoming more casual in what they were wearing and they wanted to kind of dress down. So like their casual dress down attire was dark colored suit, only a white shirt, but no tie.
Oh,
That's
totally casual.
casual. That's German casual right there, right? So I think that's essentially how you can operate, very similar to Mercedes. Um, one of the Mercedes power teams, speaking of Mercedes, Williams, they're going to be back. They're going to have two cars. But the question is for how long? Because they're still working without a spare chassis. So can you race competitively? Like if James Vowles is there telling Alex and Logan, like, guys, don't fuck this up, or like we're screwed. What do you do in that scenario? Are they going to be anywhere near competitive? Are they going to be able to push the car, or is this just really like getting through the next few races until they can fucking find enough quarters in the couch to pay for that spare chassis?
To be honest, I actually don't think it's going to matter. I don't think,
No.
well, because Albon's going to drive the same way because he's got a second car, whether Sargent likes it or not. Yeah, he's like, I got two cars regardless. Sargent's got to be careful. But I think that, like, Sargent being careful is whatever anyway. Like, he doesn't really know how to drive that thing. So, like, ultimately, I don't think anything's going to change. Albon's going to be racing competitively because he's got his backup. And I think Sargent's going to spin it and put it in a wall. And Suzuka is not an easy track. Like
No.
that track definitely has some difficult corners and some really unique situations where I think that Logan Sargent just doesn't have the experience. Albon's done pretty well here historically, but Logan Sargent he just doesn't have the experience here for us to say anything positive about what his race is going to look like.
I kind of agree. I mean, from what the data has shown us, there's a high chance Logan Sargent is going to fuck it up. But for argument's sake, let's say Albon fucks this up and Sargent finishes maybe not in the points, but actually finishes with a healthy, good chassis. What happens next race? Would they still give it to Albon, or would they actually do a switch? Now, that would be interesting because in my eyes, in my opinion, I think they would have to give it to Sargent just because to have that, team outlook on it. Because if you give it to Albon, I think at that point you're gonna stir up some real big shit within internal big shit. Because at that point it clearly shows favoritism. It clearly shows who's the better driver, which we all know that already. But it would just be very, very interesting to see.
Well, with the big shit piled on the other big shit, let's just go ahead and assume that that the teams have to do whatever is the smartest logically in order for them to get points. As we said in the last podcast, each one of these points is going to be worth tens of millions of dollars. So if you have one car and two drivers, Albon's going to win every day of the week over top of Logan Sargent. Let's hope they don't get themselves in that situation. But the reality is it can very well happen very quickly. And it might even happen in our homeboy Ed's FP1 or even FP2, because I know he loves watching that.
Well, lots to look forward to. Primarily, is Logan going to be able to drive on Sunday? Because, fuck, who knows?
He's gonna fucking kill it, and he's gonna outperform Albon. That's my prediction.
Can you imagine? You know what? Maybe him losing his car was like Carlos losing his appendix. Just gonna fucking light a fire under him. And he's just gonna
Exactly.
destroy it.
He's not gonna give a fuck, and he's gonna drive the piss out of that car, but he's not going to crash.
What do you think that did to his self-esteem?
Killed it.
Absolutely emasculated him.
No, I think I think he knows his role.
Yeah, but
I think he knows his role and shuts his mouth and just is happy to just be there. But I understand where you're coming from. But in that, but you know what? The way they framed it, they're talking about data. They're talking about this year so far. Even if you took into account last year, it doesn't really matter. He's just being dominated. So it's hard for him to make a case for himself given his performance over the last year and 3 races, right?
But what that just proves to me, if I were Logan Sargent, it'd be of the 20 drivers on the grid, this is just 100% fact and proof that I am the worst, that there are 19 other better drivers on the grid than I am, to the point where even when they took my car away from me and gave it to my teammate. That's how bad I am. Which means,
you know what?
No, yeah, give 1 second. Hold on, Thomas. Which means that maybe there is somebody else in F2 that deserves that seat more.
Yeah. Or reserve driver, or,
anyone else
out really. There, anyone. Basically anyone.
Yeah, literally.
Yeah. Bring back Nick DeVries.
Yes.
No.
I know you hate him because you think he has a punchable face, and I may agree or disagree with you. But let me ask you this, then, Thomas. You just got lit up. For everyone who can't see, Thomas is smiling immensely now. I love it. But Thomas, let me ask you this then: do you think Nick DeVries is a better or worse driver than Logan Sargent? Just on driver, not punchability, drivability.
Worse. You know why worse? Because for entertainment factor, I think Logan Sargent is way more entertaining to watch. Do I think Nick DeVries is a better driver? No. I'm still going to say no. I still think he's shit. Merc all the way, so Logan Sargent.
I like how sometimes with your arguments, you just abandon all logic and it just goes straight to fucking yelling random things.
Yes.
It's Merc all the way.
If I get louder, they'll believe me more.
No, but to Drew's point, what you said about Logan Sargent when he, must think that, holy shit, I'm the worst one out of those, 19 drivers. Yeah, I definitely think there is better people in F2 that deserve that seat, or to Walker's point, a reserve driver that should have that seat. Yes, he's bad. He's terrible, and I think James said, this is the year for him to improve, and if he doesn't improve, then most likely he's not going to be on the grid next year. Nothing's confirmed, obviously, but I don't think he deserves that seat in F1, just like some other drivers. It's purely for, luck or sponsorship money and not a lot of skill or talent.
I want to ask a couple of is he better than questions, because I want to find out where Thomas ranks him in terms of driving. Okay.
Are you talking about Nick DeVries or Logan Sargent?
Logan Sargent, because I need to find out where he sits. I know where he sits in the data books. He's the worst driver. But let me see. Okay, so Nick DeVries or Logan Sargent?
Just like in driving?
Yes, just driver skill. That's what I'm always talking about, driver skill.
Just driver skill, all jokes aside, Nick DeVries, yes.
Okay. Liam Lawson or Logan Sargent?
Liam Lawson.
Yuki Tsunoda or Logan Sargent?
Yuki.
Mick Schumacher or
Mick-
Logan Sargent?
Mick.
Everyone is better than Logan
Thanks.
Sargent is what I'm getting at.
I don't know.
Okay.
Mezaspin.
I was just going to ask you about Mazepin. What
that's a good one.
Latifi? What about Nicholas Latifi?
Latifi's better. I'm sorry.
This is what I'm saying.
Yeah,
But,
no, I agree with Latifi.
but if it comes to Mezaspin or Sargent, I'm gonna go with Sargent in that one.
Okay, so that's the high water mark.
Yeah.
Nikita Mazepin is the only driver
Low water mark.
The low water mark, yeah, the no water
Yeah.
mark.
Fucking puddle.
Yeah. So that's it, and so that I just wanted to prove my point is that like he's bad, man, like really bad. Like I think that there's so many drivers. Like I watched an F2 race last weekend, the Australian GP, and it was like these kids are crazy, man. Like the way that the starting grid looks is not how it finished. Like it's if you watched an F2 race recently, they're crazy. Those kids are competitive and they're going into you can tell these kids are fighting for something.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I seen a couple of F2 races. I mean, I don't watch it; it's not my thing. But I have seen some highlights and starts, and it's very, very different compared to F1. Like they're actually like what you said, Drew. They're actually fighting. They're going in tooth and nail to for those podium places. So yeah.
So I just as a side note, I wonder if that's also partly because they have like fairly similar cars. Like I feel like the cars themselves are almost identical across the F2 field. So I'm wondering if that also plays a part of it. There's not the same disparity in terms of development that you see in F1. Anyways, just a side note or a thought. Anyways,
Agreed, but,
I think the point
we
is that
got
they're better
Ollie
than Logan
Behrman,
Sargent.
we got Antonelli, we got what's that other kid's Fittipaldi's in there, Isaac Hadjar. Like, dude, these kids are amazing. Like they're just wildly impressive, and like I don't know. I can imagine Logan Sargent rounding out this year, and I don't think he's going to stick around for another.
But you know what? Look what happened with De Vries too, or some other FP2 or F2 drivers that came in. They were amazing in F2. De Vries was amazing in Formula E. You put them in an F1 car, he might have 1-2 good races, and then something happens and they just can't perform. Maybe everyone has their good days and bad days, so it's also not 100% guarantee it would be a better driver. But if we're talking specifically about Logan Sargent, yes, anyone would be a better driver than Logan Sargent from F2.
Well, based on that logic, I feel like Logan is due for a good day anytime now, because it's been a lot of fucking shit days.
Yeah,
a lot of shit days. But you know what? We're going to find out exactly what happens in a few days when we get underway at Suzuka. I think. Do we want to go over some predictions?
let's do some bold predictions.
Bold predictions.
Yeah, let's do some bold predictions. I think Thomas has already said his bold prediction. He's going to say that Logan Sargent outperforms Alex Albon.
Yes. And not crash.
Okay.
Ooh,
there we
two
go.
very big, bold predictions. I think that McLaren's going to be on the podium.
Okay. I think Yuki's going to be on the podium.
You
Come
said
on,
bold.
get real.
You didn't say crazy.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Potato.
That's it. Tomato, potato.
Tomato, potato. Potato, tomato. Whatever it is. Thank you, everybody, for listening. We're going to be back next week recapping everything that happens at Suzuka. It's going to be lots of fun, great race to watch. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to rate, subscribe, leave a comment, check the show notes, join the Discord, tell a friend. Until next time. Ciao, ciao.